Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Oh wait, it's the first video. Wait, never mind. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be ranking all Marvel movies, starting with Iron Man all the way to Avengers Endgame. So this is my first video, so it might be a little bit shaky, but yeah, let's do it. So first we're going to be ranking the Avengers. So I know that everyone thinks that Avengers is probably one of like the greatest, and I've always thought that, but after close viewing, I don't think it's as good as Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War. What the Avengers, just like the actions there, the character interactions are there. It's just it doesn't have like the same spark and same like intensity and same character depth as it does in Infinity War and Endgame and even in Civil War. So I mean Josh Whedon's humor is still there. And then every character is just like so good. They make every character better. But it just doesn't, it's not as good to me as Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. So I'm going to put it on S, which is still really good, but it's not as good as the other movies. Okay, next we have The Incredible Hulk. So most people think that this is the worst movie of the MCU. And I disagree. The main reason I disagree is that because the final fight, Hulk versus Abomination, however you say that name, I don't know. I thought it was amazing, but I can see how people don't like it as much or hate it a lot just because it's a lot different than all the other movies. It's not funny at all. It's really serious, and it doesn't look, the actor or even the Hulk, it doesn't look as good as it does in the Avengers movies. So I'm going to put it on D tier, which is relative to Marvel movies because Marvel movies are always really good. So even the worst movie is going to be mediocre at worst. And yeah, so this movie's still mediocre, but it's D tier on relative to Marvel movies. So now we have Captain America, the First Avenger. So a lot of people think that this is like, they think it's a terrible movie. And while I agree that it's the worst Captain America movie out of 3, it's still a great movie. The first half of the movie where they're talking about Captain America's origin story and him as a loser and how he like builds up to be this amazing boss, I thought it was really cool. But the second half of the movie is just like, it's not that good. So I'm gonna put it on B tier, which is still, it's good, but it's not like great or S tier or SS tier. So next we have Iron Man 3. Okay, so Iron Man 3 is probably known as the bottom 3, one of the bottom 3 movies in the Marvel movies, like in the Marvel trilogy. But I mean, the action's there. The action, Iron Man, who doesn't like Iron Man suits and like just seeing him fire and beat up bad guys? But all the filler that they put in there with the politics and everything, it just like, it's not very interesting. Justin Hammer's a pretty good villain, and seeing War Machine there is pretty good, but it's a pretty boring movie. So I'm going to put it on D tier too. Up next, we have Avengers Infinity War and duh.
Man, you corny!
I mean, Avengers Infinity War, it speaks for itself. One of the greatest movies of all time. They're one of the best villains of all time. Probably Thanos is probably the best villain of the whole MCU. Actually, not probably. He is the best villain of the MCU. And it's just because they show that depth with him, and then they show all these characters, and the fact that the Russos could juggle all these characters together in one movie is crazy. And it has so much action. The scene where Thor lands in Wakanda is one of the best scenes in the MCU. I've watched that scene like 50 times. It's amazing. Okay, up next we have Black Panther, and a lot of people would put Black Panther S tier. I don't think it's that good.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
It's just people, it's widely accepted that the CGI just isn't that great, so that kind of brings it down for me. I don't think it's terrible. It's still okay, but it's not like very good. And also, the villain's incredible. He's probably one of the Killmonger's one of the best villains of the MCU, but I've never just like digged it as much as other people. So I'm gonna put it on A tier, which is so great. So next we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and this is probably my favorite movie in the entire MCU. And here's why. So when you think of the name Captain America, most people don't really like him, and I think I know why. It's because of his the name just like it glorifies campiness. It just like he's super square, you think. But this movie completely changes that and flips it on his head. And I'm gonna put it in SS tier, and here's why. The the action in this movie is incredible, paragon of its time. The hand-to-hand combat is so good. The Winter Soldier is one of the best villains I've ever seen. So scary, so intimidating. Black Widow's a complete like awesome character in this movie. They made her so much better. She was already great, but they made her just like so cool in this movie. Sam Wilson as Falcon was also really cool. He's just like cool as Captain America's sidekick along Black Widow, and they showed this political thriller, and then they showed the corruption, how bad patriotism, like, because the first movie was all about being a patriot and serving for your country, but the second movie really shows how corrupt and bad politics can become. So I'm gonna put it as S here, and some people may disagree with me, but I think it's my favorite movie of the whole MCU. Okay, next we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I'm not going to say it's bad, or even I'm not going to say it's terrible, but it feels like filler. It does, besides the ending scene where he's put in a ball, when he's put in the quantum realm, which is pretty important. It's obviously amazingly important, but it's just everything else about the movie. It's funny because Ant-Man movies are always funny, but it just feels like filler. It's just like, why am I watching this? It is pretty. Him and his daughter, just like those scenes are pretty cool, but I think it's filler. Okay. Up next we have Thor Ragnarok, and this movie's it's one of my favorite movies. The other two Thor movies I don't like them that much. They're still fine in like movie perspective, but relative to the MCU, to me they're pretty bad. But Thor Ragnarok is by far the best movie of the Thor trilogy. It's one of the funniest movies of the MCU ever. The humor is so good. That the villain is also pretty good. How she just kills all those Asgardians when Thor leaves, and it also has those connections where Thor is just like he's super beat down by all this stuff that's going around, and it's just incredible. I love how Hulk is put in this movie. I like the girl who's in that movie, but it's just great. I don't think it's SS tier, but because sometimes it goes a little bit too far with the comedy, but it's great. It's amazing. Okay, up next we have Avengers: Infinity War, one of the greatest movies of all time, highest grossing movie ever, and there's a reason for that. Endgame. The ending, the third act of the movie is just incredible. It's one of the best battles or fight scenes I've ever seen. It's better than the airport scene, in my opinion. When the Portals theme starts playing and everyone arrives, and then they have that big Avengers theme playing, and then everyone starts charging in, it's awesome. And I just love the time machine, and I love how at the beginning of the movie you think that you think it's gonna go this way, but when they kill Thanos just like that, you're like, what? Oh my god, he's just gone. Wow. And then they do a 5-year time skip. It was like, wow, this is completely different than I thought it was. And yeah, and then all the time travel stuff is great. There's a few plot holes in there, but it's time travel. What do you expect? But yeah, SS here. Okay. Now we have Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that's volume 2. So I think that this movie is. I think it's. I've watched it a few times, and every time I watch it, it gets worse and worse. But I still think it's C tier. Obviously, the best part of this movie is Yondu, his relationship with Peter Quill, and just like his death at the end is so emotional. Chris Pratt is amazing as Star Lord. Gamora is also amazing. Her relationship with Peter Quill is just it's. I think it's one of the best in the MCU. Drax is really funny. So is Rocket, obviously, but it's Rocket. Baby Groot is pretty cool. Um, but yeah, the ego as a villain, it didn't really hit with me. Usually, when you have just evil villains, sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't. But this time, he just seemed very generic. Okay, now we have Thor. Yep. So my problem with Thor is the beginning part of the movie where you're introduced to all these gods, right? And you're introduced to all these Norse mythology. I think that's the best part of the movie. But when he lands in New Mexico, I think it's New Mexico. It just the pacing is just terrible. It everything gets killed by when he lands in New Mexico. It's like you feel like you're stalling, and then when he faces off against a big robot, the destroyer, I think it just I really didn't like it. Honestly, I might even put it on F tier. I think I have to. Yeah. Okay, now we have Doctor Strange, and a lot of people don't like this movie. I love it. I think it's great. I don't think it's S or SS tier, but I think it's A tier. And here's why. So the visual effects in this movie are amazing. Stephen Strange's rise up, how he was implemented into the Marvel formula, and he came up with his greatness. It's really cool to see how he's just like this rich guy who's arrogant, like just an arrogant guy, and then he got kicked so down hard, and then yeah, it was just great seeing his character arc. The only flaw that I see with this movie is that the villain isn't that great, but everything else is pretty good. Also, the humor's great. Um, Up next we have Iron Man. Iron Man, obviously, first movie of the MCU, and he made our Iron Man popular because before that, Iron Man in the comics he was not that popular, and he was just like nobody knew about him. But when this movie dropped, everyone knows who Iron Man is now, just because of this movie. His suits are awesome. They're so cool. Whenever he's just fighting, it's just so cool to watch. And yeah, I gotta put it on S tier. I don't think it's S tier just because these movies just have these weight behind it in the characters, and I don't think that besides Tony Stark, I don't think it has that weight behind it. But yeah, I'm gonna put it on S tier. Okay. Now we have Avengers Age of Ultron. So this is widely known as the worst Avengers movie. And I don't think it's terrible. I think it's C tier, but I don't think it's definitely a step down from everything else. When Thor just like leaves, it's like what the heck is this? Like why did he just like leave for no reason? I get why he left, but it just felt so weird. The two twins, they were really cool, especially Scarlet Witch. Elizabeth Olsen does really good, and I forgot the actor of the Quicksilver, but he was also pretty good. But it just doesn't hit right every time as the other three Avengers films. And I mean, I've watched this movie every time, again and again. I used to think it was A tier, but then as I kept watching it over and over again, it got lower and lower and lower, and it came down to C tier. So yeah. So next we have Guardians of the Galaxy. So most people think that this movie's SS tier. I don't think it's SS tier. I think it's S tier. Not for any real reasons. It just doesn't hit me as hard as everyone else had that impact on them. I think it's still phenomenal. Everybody working together, the issues that they have with each other, it's very believable. His origin story with his mom, it's really cool. Everything in the movie is just great. All the character interactions between the team is amazing. And the ending with the orb, the Power Stone. It's just all amazing, and the music is awesome, and it's by far the funniest movie in the MCU. Okay, up next we have Captain America: Civil War, and again, I've never liked Captain America, but the MCU movies really changed it for me. Obviously, everyone loves Civil War just because the airport scene is one of the greatest movie scenes ever. All of the Avengers just facing off with each other, Spider-Man and Black Panther being implemented into the God, I can't talk. And then just being implemented into the MCU, it was a great thing to watch. And the villain was pretty good. Everything that was going on with Bucky and Cap was just really cool. And yeah, I think it's SS tier. So now we have Captain Marvel, and I don't know if I'm gonna put it on F or G tier, but every time I've watched this movie 3 times, and like every time I watch it, it just gets worse and worse. A lot of these movies, I've said that a lot about a lot of these movies, but this one especially, this one in Age of Ultron especially, this movie's just like the beginning is terrible. I hate the beginning so much, but it gets better, I guess. But it keeps changing the tone and the mood of the story, and I can't get behind it. And they never even explain her powers at all. And yeah, I think her powers are cool, but it's not that interesting. Plus, her actors, the Captain Marvel's actor is just a dick.
Watch your profanity. Right, I'm sorry.
Ant-Man, and I love this movie. I think it's A tier, one of the funniest movies ever. It's kind of a heist movie. I love the technology with Ant-Man, just the interactions. The Luis, I think his name was, all the stories he had, and like just how they connected together was so funny. Everything, it was very entertaining all throughout, and yeah, I loved it. Now we have Spider-Man Far From, or no, Homecoming. Wait a minute. Far From Home is in here. Oh. But anyway, we have Homecoming, and I think this movie's A tier as well. So just the arc that Peter Parker has, and just the interactions he has with Iron Man, and the way that it just builds. And Vulture is one of the best villains in the whole movie. I mean, in the whole MCU. And you can tell why. He's doing it for believable cause. He's just trying to support his family, and you understand why he's so mad at the villain or the Avengers for what they did to him. And it's believable. It makes sense. And everything in the movie is great. I don't think it's SS or S tier. It's kind of like what's its name? It's kind of like Black Panther and Guardians of Galaxy. It didn't have as much of deep character interactions as the other movies, but it's still amazing. Okay, now we have Iron Man 3. So a lot of people hate this movie. A lot of people think it's like F tier. I don't think it's F tier. I think it's C tier, and here's why. A lot of people think that the villain twist of the Mandarin really ruins it, and I think it made it worse, but I didn't think it completely ruined it. I thought that the Mark 42 suit was one of the coolest suits in the whole MCU for Iron Man. Just like the fight scenes, especially when they were attacking his house, was so cool. Just seeing him survive and fighting all these people, and then just being a complete badass was just so cool all throughout. And yeah, I love this movie, but I know the reasons why it's less. But yeah, I still think it's C tier. I don't think it's terrible, but I can't put it any higher because there's big flaws with the movie. Okay, now we have Thor: The Dark World, and this is the worst movie in the MCU. And I think most people agree with that it's the worst movie in the MCU because I mean, the villain Malekith is just terrible. He's so boring. He doesn't have anything. Like he's just not interesting at all. Nothing about him is just like interesting. And when you're watching that movie, the only redeeming qualities are him and Thor and Loki. Everything else is just so boring. And actually, scratch that. Thor isn't even that much interesting. It's just really Loki. Loki's always been interesting, but yeah. And that is my tier list. Tell me what you agree and disagree with, and we'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in another video.